Less of the, yeah, baby, trap queen type of hustler songs. You risk your creative project never seeing the big screen. You also are in danger. He needs a letter of recommendation, or rather a character reference, to help with his sentencing for cryptocurrency crimes. I hope that a colleague or friend of yours is not one day saying about you, raised a fund from investors and I got 10. Seen a homie do the same thing and he got 10 years in federal prison or $1 million in fines. You have a great idea either for a film or other creative project and you need capital. So what do? You start asking for capital. If you're fundraising like this.
Hello, this is calling. We're reaching out to invite you to review a private equity investment opportunity in an animated feature we're producing titled.
You not only risk your creative project never seeing the big screen, but you also are in danger of legal and other financial liabilities. If you are getting cash from investors in exchange for an ownership interest in your creative project or a share of the profits, you may actually be selling securities. A security is a contract or an ownership interest or a transaction that's structured so that one person is investing money into a common enterprise, your creative project, and there is a reasonable expectation of profit, of return, based on the efforts of another. That's the Howey-test. All that means is that when you're raising money for your creative project and you are getting money in exchange for a share in the ownership or the profits, you are selling securities. There are rules about offering securities in the United States. Among those are that you have to actually register with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, any offering of securities, unless you meet an exemption. Common exemptions, ones that I see oftentimes with my fund formation clients, also apply to people fundraising in other verticals, including film and creative projects. So common exemption from registration is under 506B or 506C of Regulation D under the Securities Act of 1933. The important thing for you to remember, though, is that to avoid having to register with the SEC, which is a very burdensome and involved and expensive process, you need to fit an exemption. Those exemptions are based on how and who you ask for money. One of the key parts of the exemption under 506B is that you don't engage in general solicitation. That means no cold calling, mass emailing, or mass voicemails like I received here. If you don't, you run the risk of ruining your exemption, and this could result in having to give back money to investors, fines and penalties with the SEC, as well as reputational harm to you and your investors. Trying to monetize or get your creative work out there as a media company or an individual creative is challenging enough, let alone dealing with legalities and financial terms that you might not be familiar with. You want to work with a law firm that understands corporate law. Those rules don't just apply to big financial institutions. They also apply to creatives and media companies that are looking to raise outside capital in the form of equity. Even though we were just talking about film finance, these conceptual building blocks, what is a security, the Howey-test, registration versus exemption, these conceptual building blocks apply across verticals, whether you're talking about investing or raising capital through a paper contract, stock issuances, or even blockchain. Yes, crypto. The question of what is a security and how the Howey-test applies is integral to understanding cryptocurrencies and crypto winter. For more about crypto winter, including my work with clients in the cryptocurrency space back in 2017, 2018, check out Casualties of Crypto Winter, separate video that we put out. The main thing here is to remember that crypto winter was caused by multiple forces, including speculation, bad behavior, but also regulatory uncertainty and high-profile failures precipitated the crash. When we talk about regulatory uncertainty and high-profile failures, the question of whether cryptocurrencies were securities or not was integral, especially back in 2018. I literally sat at a meeting of the SEC in DC on behalf of a client that wanted to understand whether there was a difference between security tokens and utility tokens. Unfortunately, many high-profile crypto issuers, crypto platforms back in 2018, they misjudged. They bet wrong on the question of whether tokens were securities, and that led to enforcement actions. The big part of crypto winter in 2018, largely due to these high-profile crypto failures in the news, crypto finance and Ponzi schemes or fraud and bad behavior have become associated in popular culture. I just saw a recent example of this, spoiler alert. In a recent episode of Abbot Elementary, one of the teachers, Miss Shementi, has one of her students come back, and he's a successful businessman. She's decided to show her students what they can achieve, and she's proud to show the other teachers the great businessman that she helped educate. Lo and behold, this guy is here not to check in with an old favorite teacher. He's at the school because he needs a letter of recommendation, or rather a character reference, to help with his sentencing for a conviction for cryptocurrency crimes. So yes, often in popular thinking, when we think of crypto, we think of Ponzi schemes or financial wizardry. One of my colleagues, an AI developer, still says he doesn't really understand or trust crypto. With that said, attitudes towards crypto and the regulatory regime have changed. First of all, the Trump administration, as we've discussed, has taken a much more friendly, much more permissive approach to regulating crypto. They purportedly have tried to offer more guidelines and less regulation by enforcement. One of the big updates that just came out last month in a joint SEC-CFTC report was guidance that certain cryptocurrencies actually could become non-security digital assets if certain conditions were met. In the context of this political and regulatory change, it's not surprising that we're seeing, even in popular culture, crypto is coming up, the Abbot episode. As far as pop culture goes, MMA, or at least the UFC corner of popular culture, is very crypto friendly. We've talked about that a lot. The UFC counts crypto platforms and crypto brands among the numerous brand partnerships that it makes money from. You have the various deals with Crypto.com, including the apparel, the fight kit with the fighters wear into the ring, as well as various Octagon and other promo. Also, the recently announced $1 million crypto pool bonus is going to be in the form of CRO tokens via Crypto.com and the UFC as part of the White House card. Another crypto relationship that we've talked about is the UFC's deal with Fight ID to release fight tokens. Given what we just talked about, crypto is often a security, and when you're offering securities, you have to be careful to comply with regulations. We should ask ourselves about the UFC's crypto moves and how they're navigating the regulatory regime. CRO and the fight token, they seem to be different. As a disclaimer, I don't have the specific details of either token, and I'm not the UFC's lawyer, so this is just information based on my observations. It looks like the CRO or the Crypto.com token may be more like that non-security digital asset that the SEC has just let us know can exist. And the fight token seems much more like a crypto security. I say that because, one, the SEC just wrapped up an investigation of Crypto.com, and in that investigation, they decided to take no action, which basically means that at that time, they're not willing to say there are any securities violations. Secondly, it looks like the CRO token functions much more like a platform tool in order to participate by rewards. In contrast, the fight token, it looks like via staking, its governance, and economic participation for the holders of the tokens, that it's much more like a security, that it has that reasonable expectation of profit due to the efforts of another. Whether you're raising or investing capital, and whether it's through traditional securities issuance or it's through the blockchain, through crypto, you have to understand risk and reward. That reminds me of a song that I have been bumping constantly as I've been working and getting through my week. The line is, hit the plug with 100 and I got 10. Seen a homie do the same thing and he got 10. That's a line from Fetty Wap's Eastside M's from his recently released comeback album, Zouvier. Fetty reminds us that when it comes to risk and reward, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. When we talk about risk and reward, in this song, it starts with his creative and artistic risk. This album sonically is a bit different than his past projects. Besides the sonic feel, the vibe of it, the substantive message of the song is one that's important for today. Just because someone else does something risky and succeeds doesn't mean that that strategy is right for you. Let's look at that line again. Hit the plug with 100 and I got 10, meaning he took $100,000 cash to his wholesaler and got 10 kilos of narcotics. The next line he says, seen a homie do the same thing and he got 10. The 10 he's talking about here is not 10 kilos. No, he's talking about 10 years. My message to you, whether you're investing or raising capital, regardless of the vertical, whether it's a creative space, small business, a startup, whether it's an entertainment promotion like the UFC, whether you're using paper contracts, stock certificates, or blockchain, you need to make the appropriate risk assessment for you. Just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean that it's safe for you to do it. I deal with this all the time. I have a very smart client that we helped form an AI startup, potentially has some patentable technology. We're structuring a Series Seed for this client. He proposed a risky fundraising strategy, and I gently reminded him, hey, this might blow our exemption, so why don't we do this instead? This recommendation will get you to the same place with less risk. He eventually agreed, but not before giving two counter arguments. The first was from ChatGPT Esquire, which as lawyers and advisors, we're getting a lot more clients who are coming to us with ChatGPT and other AI-generated suggestions, and we're having to deal with that. ChatGPT was completely wrong here. So as a reminder, ChatGPT is not a lawyer. The second data point that he came back with was, hey, my buddy who's fundraising for his startup, he just did a similar blast email to this list and he didn't have any problems. That principle from Eastside M's applies to that client and applies to you. I hope that a colleague of yours is not one day saying about you, raised a fund from investors and I got 10. Seen a homie do the same thing and he got 10. Years in federal prison or $1 million in fines. When you're raising or investing capital via equity, you need a law firm that understands the securities laws, how to structure and compliance with them. Whether it's film, fights, finance, music, opportunities are all around you. So remember to watch the ops. Talk to us at cadetlegal.ai or at cadetlegal across socials. Take care.